Hello and welcome. Once again, we are here for another week, and I put another poll over on Instagram for what you guys wanted to be drawn this week. Again, guys, we're going to be sketching today on Monday. On Tuesday, we'll be inking. Wednesday, we'll colour the paper version, which is going to be in this book here. And then on Thursday, Friday, and probably Saturday and Sunday, I'll be putting out a few more videos with for this picture as digitized and you going into my free app called Critter. But that's later in the week, and if you want to check out any of that stuff, go and check out the other videos that should be in this playlist or linked at the end of the video. So that's enough for that ball. Let's get on and tell you what actually got chosen. And what chosen was out of the two, which was Mermaid. Once again, that's what that was last week, and another picture from Endgame. Well, you guys were very incisive on what you wanted to do, what you wanted me to draw, because it was a 50-50. It was 100% Mermaid, but then over the course of the time that the timer was counting down to now, you guys have gone to 50-50. So I kind of decided, well, I couldn't decide, obviously, because that's why I put the choice up for you. So I did, again, use these two characters. We'll be Jazz Chicken, and we've got Boomba, who I will eventually be making into little things you can sort of collect and have over the time. But that's something in the future. For now, we're going to be keeping on with the illustrations and using those for posters, pictures, and T-shirts. If you would like to purchase one, guys, don't forget to ask me in the comment section. If you just want to know anything about them, come over to Instagram and have a chat over there. But we are live now, guys. So if you do want to leave a comment and have a chat to me about the picture that we're drawing today, then feel free to do so. Then again, if you haven't seen Endgame, and if it's been that far and you really haven't seen it yet, guys, where have you been? But just again, spoilers for what is going to be drawn. We're going to be drawing a Thor and Captain America. If you know anything about that from the Endgame, you know what I mean. We're going to try and use Fat Thor and Captain America, where he catches the hammer itself. We're going to be doing a split scene again, like I tried to do for the Spidey, where we will be saying something, and then it will split into something else, and then you get another scene, and then you get the final scene at the end here in the bottom, what do they call them? The panels. I'm trying to do like a comic type thing this time, and instead of just doing one image or a whole scene, I'm going to cut the scene into little bits, and that is what these panels are for. That I've drawn out already. Again, guys, if you want to leave a comment, you can do. I'm going to turn on a playlist, as always, listening into the background. But my name is Blut084, BLUT084 Art and Games. I'm here every single day on YouTube, occasionally on Mixer, where I game and chat to you going live on that streaming site. But I'm also, as you know, over on Instagram. Same name, different place. If you guys, again, don't know anything about what's going to happen, spoilers.
When Thor first showed up in the MCU, he was brash, arrogant, and self-centered. Sure, he was a god, but he was still kind of a jerk. We've seen him grow a lot since then, but that doesn't mean he's perfect. Many of us were disappointed that he didn't aim for Thanos' head in Avengers Infinity War. But did Thor manage to redeem himself? We'll talk about what
using reference from my phone to draw from, just for sort of ideas. So we'll have a Thor up here, calling for his hammer.
Fans consider the movies Thor and Thor: The Dark World to be
We're not going to do exact scene.
Okay to pretty good categories of Marvel films. They're not terrible.
You got to use basic sketch forms.
But they don't stand up to some of the other gems of the Marvel movie library. Despite his first two standalone films being lackluster, Thor is a hero who has always shined. In fact, both Thor and Loki are two fan-favorite MCU characters, despite the fact that they've starred in some pretty mundane movies. Thor started out as a bold, brash, and arrogant person who soon realized he was totally unfit to rule Asgard, and really that seems like the kind of thing Odin should have noticed before pushing his coronation. Really? What was he thinking? But by the end of the first movie, Thor realized he had to do better if he wanted to be a good ruler and a good hero. And unlike most people who just talk about improving, Thor really did grow into a true hero. But this doesn't mean he was free of the issues which we've seen plague other heroes in the MCU. Thor has experienced tremendous loss in his life, and even if you're a superhero or an Asgardian god, that still hurts. His mother Frigga passed away in the Dark World. He lost his father Odin in Ragnarok, and his brother Loki perished in Infinity War. Even his girlfriend, Jane Foster, called things off, and while he tried to be casual about it, it was clearly causing him pain. Come on, Thor, we all know it wasn't mutual. It never is. And in Endgame, we got to see the culmination of all those years of pain and suffering on Thor's psyche. We did see hints of it during Infinity War, namely when he used Stormbreaker to aim for Thanos' chest instead of his head. He let his personal desire for vengeance override doing what was right, and it ended terribly for everybody. Sure, it's easy to focus on the way Thor let himself go post-Infinity War. Yes, he does look like the dude from The Great Lebowski. Yes, he drinks way too much beer. And yes, you could be playing Fortnite with the God of Thunder, but really, what we saw was someone who had been completely overcome by loss and self-loathing. When he traveled back in time with Rocket to collect the Reality Stone, we saw him summon Mjolnir, a moment that made the audience cheer, but left Thor feeling relieved. He was genuinely concerned that negative feelings about himself and the overwhelming hopelessness which had consumed his life had caused him to become unworthy. Sometimes superheroes forget their people too. We've seen Tony Stark struggle with his mental health in Iron Man 3, and this is really just Thor going through something similar. It's easy to laugh at Thor's big old beer belly, and clearly Marvel intended us to have that reaction. Thor went from being a perfectly chiseled god to looking like Andy from Trailer Park Boys. But Thor's poor housekeeping,
been watching that
isolation
recently,
from people, and abysmal personal hygiene are all very real symptoms of depression. Thor wasn't throwing back beer to have fun. He was trying to self-medicate. Thor knew he was supposed to be leading the Asgardians, but he felt unworthy of even lifting his own hammer. Did you notice that despite his shocking appearance, Thor never went through any sort of training montage? There was no time skip, no ancient Asgardian magic, or any innovative workout routine that made Thor magically get his old form back. Yet, we see Thor become his old self over the course of the film. He gets back into the battle, reconnects with old friends, cleans up his hair and beard, and gets that gleam back in his eye. Well, at least the one real eye he has left. This purely emotional and mental transformation is proof that Thor's issue wasn't just that he put on some weight. He was dealing with some seriously heavy stuff, and as we've seen before, even heroes can have issues with their mental health. During his reunion with his mother Frigga, she assures him that everyone fails from time to time, and that it's important to be who you are despite this. This is something we see Thor truly take to heart, and it's reflected in his actions later in the movie. We had a lot of questions after Avengers Endgame ended, and one of them was just how is power transferred in Asgard? Is it really just through a firm old handshake delivered with zero witnesses? If so, that seems like a pretty terrible way to go about things. Yet we see Thor do exactly this when he hands over the reins of New Asgard to Valkyrie. It may look like Thor is giving Valkyrie the boring administrative duties.
Just sketching things out a minute, guys, getting some few ideas. That's why it looks crap, but we're using basic lines.
Thor is doing exactly what Frigga told him
and keeping things the way.
That is to be himself. Walking away from something which
Hopefully
you've
it'll
always
work.
been told is your birthright and your destiny is no easy thing. Thor has always felt a strong sense of responsibility towards Asgard, but he knows he's leaving the Asgardians in good hands. Weirdly enough, Thor heading out with the Guardians of the Galaxy, or should we say the Asgardians of the Galaxy, is really a form of self-care. Thor is finally doing what makes him happy, and we can't wait to see where that takes him. Interestingly enough, actor Chris Hemsworth has been on a similar journey to that experienced by Thor. He revealed that while he enjoyed the first Thor movie, he felt like his character got watered down to some extent. He said he felt movies like The Dark World and The Age of Ultron became predictable or overly earnest, self-important and serious. He lamented that not enough unexpected things happened to the God of Thunder, and this made him feel similarly stagnant and unfulfilled as an actor. Thankfully, when he brought these concerns to Marvel Studios, they actually listened. His feedback and insight into his character was a driving force behind Thor Ragnarok, which many hail as one of the best movies in the MCU. Heading into Endgame, Hemsworth and Marvel wondered if you took away Thor's flowing blonde locks, hammer, and cape, just who would he be? It's a question we didn't know we needed the answer to, but it added so much depth to the character. Now that we know what's going on with the God of Thunder, we can concentrate on other important questions. Like, where the heck is Loki? Bring back that boy! So, what do you think about what Thor experienced in Avengers Endgame? Do you think it was a fitting entry into the God of Thunder's story, or would you have liked to see something different? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section below, and click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.
Now on a bit higher. A bit smaller
Time
as well.
travel. It's a great way to fix problems. Forgot to do your homework? Go back in time and make it right. Got killed by Noob Master 69 in Fortnite? Jump back in time and eliminate him first. 50% of all lives been wiped out from existence? Just jump on back in time and prevent it. Oh, wait, that's not how time travel actually works in the MCU. You can't change your own past, but you can certainly mess up the future for other timelines. We think that when the Avengers stole the Infinity Stones from the past to undo the decimation, they ended up creating a bunch of alternate timelines. And because of the change to the past, they may have messed up those timelines forever. It turns out that Back to the Future and almost every other time travel movie you've ever watched is a big old bunch of baloney. Bruce Banner, aka Smart Hulk, explained that if you travel back in time, you don't actually alter the future, but instead end up creating a whole new timeline. He guessed that Smart Hulk didn't watch Doctor Strange, where the Sorcerer Supreme used the Time Stone to travel back in time without jumping to another timeline, but maybe the rules for time travel are different when it comes to the Infinity Stones. Look, it's very convoluted and confusing, and the only real rule for time travel is don't overthink it too much or your head will explode. While there's no doubt that Avengers Endgame is one heck of a cinematic achievement and a movie event like no other, there's some serious confusion as to how the time travel actually works in the MCU. In Endgame, we saw the Avengers use the quantum realm to travel back in time. Initially, the heroes travel to 3 points in time to collect the 6 Infinity Stones. We see Captain America, Iron Man, Smart Hulk, and Ant-Man travel back to the Battle of New York in 2012 to collect the Space, Time, and Mind Stones. Thor and Rocket jumped to Asgard in 2013 to steal the Reality Stone, and the 2014 group splits into teams. Black Widow and Hawkeye travel to Vormir to obtain the Soul Stone, while Nebula and War Machine are forced to watch Star-Lord dancing around on Morag before they grab the Power Stone. As expected, things don't go according to plan. The 2012 timeline gets messed up big time, as Loki steals the Space Stone and teleports to his own spin-off show, forcing Steve Rogers and Tony Stark to travel back to 1970 in order to get a different Space Stone. But seriously, was Thor so drunk that he forgot to mention that there was a Space Stone just sitting in Odin's vault on Asgard back in 2013? The 2014 timeline gets messed up as well. After 2014 Thanos learns about the future, he travels to 2023 with his entire army, which could mean that there's a new timeline where Thanos and his troops are missing, making life much better for everyone in that new timeline. After Smart Hulk brings all the Dusted back to life, and Tony Stark snaps his fingers to dust Thanos and his whole army, we're led to believe that the timeline is kind of fixed. We see Captain America going back in time to return all the Infinity Stones to their original timelines, which will prevent a bunch of alternate realities. But is it really as simple as that? There's a big catch to that ending. First of all, as Smart Hulk explained about time travel, any change in the past leads to the creation of new timelines. So while Cap might have put all the stones back in their original places, that's still a change in the past. Beyond that, when Captain America goes back in time, all the stones are just in a case. But as we all know, most Infinity Stones were housed inside special containers. For example, the Space Stone was hidden inside the Tesseract, and we're not sure how Steve could place the stones back into their containers on his own. He might be worthy to swing Thor's hammer Mjolnir now, but he can't just conjure objects out of thin air. To put the stones back into their containers, Cap will need some magical or cosmic help. It's possible that the Ancient One could offer some help with that, but if Steve ends up asking the 2012 Ancient One for help, he'll automatically alter the past and create a whole new timeline. The Soul Stone could be one of the hardest to return, because beyond the fact that it was hidden by some type of dark magic, to return the stone to its place, Captain America will need to meet his old nemesis, the Red Skull. We learned in both Infinity War and Endgame that ever since Red Skull was banished to Vormir, he got some new powers, which we assume go beyond levitating and knowing the names of people's parents. Red Skull will probably figure out that Captain America came from the future, which will of course complicate things and once again alter the timeline. Besides, the Russo brothers explained that once the Soul Stone is taken, Red Skull is free to leave Vormir. So you have to wonder why Red Skull would agree to help Captain America put the Soul Stone back into its place. Even if Cap somehow was able to return all the stones to their proper places, Steve Rogers ended up creating a whole new timeline anyway at the end of the movie, when he decided to stay in the past with the love of his life, Peggy Carter. We think that no matter what, now there are multiple versions of the past in the MCU. To make sense of all the timeline alterations, let's use the 2012 timeline as an example. We think that after Avengers Endgame, there are now at least 5 2012 timelines. The first one is the original one that existed before the Avengers traveled back in time. The second was created after the Avengers stole the Time and Mind Stones from 2012, creating a new timeline. In this new timeline, Loki has the Space Stone, and Earth is in serious danger since Doctor Strange won't be able to pull off his I came to bargain trick when Dormammu comes a-knocking, because the Time Stone's gone. The third timeline was created after Captain America and Iron Man traveled back to 1970. They took the Space Stone out of that timeline, and since the stone pretty much is the reason for the Battle of New York, it's a safe bet that 2012 will be very different in this new timeline. The fourth timeline was created after Captain America went back in time and returned to the stones. We assume that this timeline will have less change, since the stones were placed back in their places. But as we said before, this is still a change in the timeline. The fifth timeline was created after Steve Rogers traveled back in time to live his life with Peggy. Of course, the same could be said about the other timelines. In the 2013 timeline, Thor is missing his trusty hammer after 2023 Thor pretty much stole it, and we know how attached Thor feels to his hammer. Plus, the Reality Stone is missing as well. The 2014 timeline actually had more positive changes, since Thanos is missing from one of the 2014 timelines. The Thanos from 2014 was dusted in 2023, along with his entire army, so now the 2014 timeline is safe from Thanos. But it also means that the Guardians of the Galaxy will never become a team, since both the 2014 Gamora and the Power Stone are now in different timelines. Both Gamora and the Stone played major roles in the formation of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, we guess that's the price that had to be paid. 2018 Star-Lord lost his Gamora, but got a new one from the past, and the 2014 Star-Lord never actually met Gamora. So in a way, there's something kind of poetic about it all. The 1970 timeline might have had some everlasting effects, since the Tesseract is missing from it. And considering the role the Space Stone has in the MCU, the changes could be drastic. For example, take Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers got her powers from the Tesseract, and if the stone is missing, Carol will never be exposed to the energy that gave her those powers in the first place. Meaning no Captain Marvel in that timeline, and who knows how that could affect the future of the MCU and Earth. When it comes to messing around with the past, there are serious consequences for the future. The Avengers were able to undo the snap in their own timeline, but who knows what this means for the other timelines following all the changes in the past. The new timelines must look very different by this point, and since time travel has somewhat of a domino effect on time, one alteration to the past results in multiple other shifts in the timeline. This, of course, could lead to the MCU exploring more of the multiverse and these alternate realities. We did get a little hint that the multiverse exists in the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, and we really hope that we'll see more of it moving forward, since it could lead to some really great stories and the introduction of alternate versions of characters we already know. For all we know, at some point in the MCU, we can see a clash between different universes that were created in Endgame. Think about it. What if one of the new timelines gets really messed up, and the actions of the Avengers turn the timeline on its head? How awesome will it be if we end up seeing an actual war between different Earths? One of the best things about Marvel Comics is seeing many different versions of the same characters. The what-if factor is always interesting. It's always fun to take established characters and stories and turn them on their head to see how things could have played out differently. This could be the MCU's version of the Secret Wars storyline from the comics. Just imagine that epic moment in Endgame, where we see an army of heroes clashing with Thanos and his army. But instead of a bunch of CGI aliens, there will be an army of heroes from other timelines. Now that is something we all want to see. Beyond that, the Infinity Stones were used to alter reality 4 times in a row. Thanos snapped his fingers in Infinity War, but then in Endgame we found out that he used the stones again, this time to destroy the stones. 5 years later, both Smart Hulk and Tony Stark snapped their fingers back to back. Using all 6 Infinity Stones so many times is a good way to mess up reality, and we're sure that in Phase 4 and beyond we'll find out that there are serious ramifications for the 4 snaps. Regardless of how it all goes down, we really hope that the MCU doesn't end up just swiping all the changes to the timeline under the rug. The events of Endgame can have an important effect on the MCU moving forward, and considering the fact that the decimation was undone and all the dusted were brought back to life, there must be serious ramifications for all of it. Sure, both Iron Man and Black Widow gave their life for it, but we hope that the MCU will dive deeper into alternate timelines and the multiverse in Phase 4 and beyond.
Sorry guys, I'm looking for a
Do you
decent
think the
picture
Avengers
now of
messed
Thor.
up the timeline? Will we see it coming up at some
I
point in
can
the future of the
really
MCU?
sort of get the
Let us
idea
know
what it
in
looks
the
like.
comments below. And if you liked this video, we'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe to CBR. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video. With all the excitement surrounding Avengers Endgame, it's easy to forget that Spider-Man Far From Home is just around the corner. The 23rd movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has recently been confirmed to be the final movie of Phase 3 of the franchise, and not the first movie of Phase 4, as was previously thought. But even though Far From Home currently dwells in Endgame's shadow, superhero movie fans have been coming up with theories about the MCU's second Spider-Man offering for some time. In this video, we'll take you through 15 of the best of them, and please be aware it contains very minor spoilers for Avengers Endgame. We'll warn you when they're about to come. This first theory suggests that Zendaya's MJ is actually Nick Fury's daughter. Fury has spent the last few years in hiding, and hasn't been seen a whole lot in the modern-day MCU since 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron. He may very well have been protecting his family in that time, which is where MJ comes in. Like her theorized father, MJ is pretty sneaky, and is always creeping up on people, while her wardrobe is often dark in color, just like Fury's. There's also the fact that her hair is often covering one eye, which could also be a clue, given that Fury wears an eye patch. Additionally, she's always profiling people, and seems to know a little bit too much about Peter Parker, as if she's seen a top-secret file on him at home. She's also anti-government, which could stem from the fact that her father's on the run from a corrupt government. MJ could also be the reason that Fury is personally in Europe with Peter Parker, instead of having someone else from S.H.I.E.L.D. keeping tabs on him. It would certainly make for a pretty interesting twist in the franchise, and Peter would see himself under even closer scrutiny from Fury if it turned out to be true. Samuel L. Jackson will be reprising his role as Nick Fury in Spider-Man Far From Home, and that's led some fans of the MCU to theorize that he'll be Peter Parker's new mentor going forward in the franchise. Up until now, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark has been overseeing Spider-Man's superhero career, but it's no secret that without spoiling Avengers Endgame in any way, shape, or form, his role will be reduced in the MCU from now on, at the very least. There are also several clues that Stark won't be in Parker's life in Far From Home, just going by what we've seen in the movie's trailers. We see Spider-Man in a homeless shelter with his Aunt May, when Happy Hogan turns up with a check donation for $500,000, but it's Pepper Potts who signed it, not Stark. If Tony was still in Peter Parker's life, he would surely never have skipped a photo opportunity like that. And with Fury around, it certainly makes sense that he'd take over Stark's role as far as Spider-Man is concerned. His gritty style could be just what Peter needs to add a little more ruthlessness to his personality, and up his game as a superhero. Speaking of Nick Fury, there's a theory that one of his old friends might just appear in Spider-Man Far From Home, and that old friend in question is none other than Brie Larson's Carol Danvers, the superhero otherwise known as Captain Marvel. The main reason for the theory is that in the Far From Home trailer, Nick Fury can be seen alongside a female, firing guns at one of the elemental villains. Most people have assumed that the female in question is Cobie Smulders' Maria Hill, but this character seems to have lighter hair than her, so could it be Carol Danvers? Tony Stark was the flagship character of the MCU for its first decade, and Danvers is expected to take his place. So in a weird way, this might make sense. In truth, Far From Home could do with all the star power it can muster, given that it's the direct follow-up to Avengers Endgame, and could easily end up being quite underwhelming in comparison. We know that Spider-Man will don at least a couple of new costumes in Spider-Man Far From Home, one of which is confirmed to be a black version of his traditionally more colorful suit. Now, it's generally believed that the suit will be a stealth suit provided by Nick Fury, with the intention of keeping Spider-Man off the radar. The idea being to limit any connection between the web-slinger and the United States in order to avoid an international incident. The dark coloring may also be due to the fact that Fury wants Spidey to learn more about Mysterio and the Elementals, what their intentions are, how powerful they are, and so forth. But there's another theory that the movie might go the way of Spider-Man 3, with Spider-Man going dark in terms of his nature, as well as in terms of his coloring.
Change it. I'll change it to a
Oh god,
hang on a minute,
not
guys.
that again. But maybe, for example, something happens in Far From Home that sends Peter Parker
I'm really
down
in
a
the
dark
zone in a
path.
second.
Perhaps the influence of some evil mystical force, or even an alien symbiote, and the suit could be the physical manifestation of that.
Doubtful. Very doubtful.
And that nicely connects us to this next theory. The timing of the Venom movie, which came out in October of last year, has led some fans to theorize that it's linked in some way to Spider-Man Far From Home. That would mean Tom Hardy's character, having been established in his solo movie, would either make an appearance or at least being referenced in the next Spidey offering. The Venom movie was, of course, part of Sony's new franchise, and not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it wouldn't be the strangest thing that's ever happened if they crossed over with each other in some way. The Far From Home aspect of the Spider-Man sequel's title could, according to some fans, refer to space, where Spider-Man would come into contact with the Venom symbiote. But it could also refer to Peter Parker ending up in San Francisco, the city Venom becomes the lethal protector of, which was how the 2018 movie ended. In all fairness, it really is about time that Spider-Man and Venom met on the big screen in a manner that didn't completely suck. 2007 Spider-Man 3 saw Topher Grace as the Black symbiotic character, and he was arguably the worst comic book movie villain ever.
I like being bad.
I like being bad.
Jake Gyllenhaal will be playing the classic Spider-Man villain Mysterio.
Okay, we're not doing
Or
Far
will
From
he?
Home right now.
You see,
We're
there's
doing
a
that
theory
next
that
time.
this version of Mysterio won't be the classic version of the... Oh, the Master...
Nope. Go away. We'll do that another time. Let's find something actually about what we're doing.
Nice t-shirt. Do you have an Ant-Man t-shirt and a
Yeah,
Black Widow, and you just quickly switch between each?
It was a quick swap.
Yeah.
Having them paired ruined it a bit, but
yeah.
it's fine. All right, I'm going to begin with a really hot, important question. What do you make of this fan poster where everyone's had their hair cut?
I got Renner's haircut.
Yeah, mohawkified.
Oh, everyone's mohawkified. I like that. That's amazing.
Yours actually looks, and I'm not just sucking up, good.
One looks alright, eh?
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, I think Captain Marvel's having a tough time with that, isn't it? So,
Or having the day of her life.
well, having the day of my life, yeah.
So, since Infinity War came out, how many people have said to you in the street, should have gone for the head?
Quite a lot, yeah. Gone for the head. In India, in particular, I shot a movie there, and for some reason they were the most upset about it, and should have gone for the head, and
How could you?
Yeah, just constantly.
But that scene, when you first watched the movie in its entirety, you must have felt amazing when it's bringing Thanos. And the whole audience just erupts.
It was pretty special, and I hadn't seen the film yet, and Joe Russo was telling me about it, and I when we shot that scene, I was like, no, yeah, I didn't think it was going to be a special scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got real sort of tingles of, and it's also the first time I'd seen the special effects and all of it in place. And then someone sent me an audio clip from India again of an audience when it happened, and it was like this sort of 3-minute cheer and scream. It was crazy.
They had to pause the film so everyone could just calm down.
Quiet.
A bit less of that. I love the behind-the-scenes footage of Brolin wearing the giant chest. It's hysterical.
I mean, I don't know why they released that stuff, because it's sort of, talk about like seeing behind the curtain and it ruining everything. But when you see someone in the mocap suit or whatever, I guess you kind of appreciate then how far it comes. But at the same time, it's a little like...
Yeah. Oh, God, that must have been a weird day. Yeah. Anyway, what's it like learning to fight with a new weapon? Because you've been so used to his hammer for so long now. And here you are with a hammer axe, which is also one of your character's best friend's arms.
Yeah. It's quite traumatic, isn't it? It's pretty awkward, that thing. It's although it's probably no less clumsy than than the other hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's tricky, but this was a lot more kind of sword-esque sort of swinging around. The other one was like an extension of your hand.
Like biking, and now this is more like kind of fencing. I don't know.
Fencing? Yeah.
Being an idiot. I wonder I'm making sense here.
I like this one.
With this film, how hard is it to talk about it and promote it on this press tour?
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty, especially when like some people come in and they're like trying to kind of trick you into an answer. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to get us,
guys. They wrote a fake script.
That's right.
I don't know what's in the film.
No, I haven't even read the script, nor have I seen the movie. I read my little bits, and that's it.
I never read the script. I just riff. I walk in.
If it has pictures, great, and that's why I signed on. And I realized it's not all comic books. And that was.
I'm going to end with this. What is your favorite Thor line over the years? Because there's one in Infinity War, which is, "It'll kill you only if I die."
Yeah. It'll kill you. And if I die.
It's a peach.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what killing you means.
What are your other favorites?
He's your friend from work. Yeah.
Hey! We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Which was actually, we had a kid on set that day who was very unwell, and he'd come to visit as part of the sort of, they brought him here in the set, and he suggested the line. So amazing.
I love Another from the first film.
Another, yeah, you're right. Another, yeah.
Drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another.
I can't take you back. I mean, Bring Me Thanos is pretty.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
Let's leave it on that. Thank you so much.
All right. Love you.
And I'll see you again later. Thanks for watching. If you like that, then do watch these videos, or you can listen to my podcast called Radio 1 Screen Time. Oh, and do not forget to hit that subscribe button. You can now get more Radio 1 in your life by downloading the BBC Sounds app.
I don't care. Right. Endgame ruined Thor. Okay, we'll see what they're saying about it. That's an advert. Wow.
What is up, Key Issues Legends? Nick here, and I wanted to take a minute at the beginning of this video to address two really important things that you need to know about what you're about to watch. First, and probably most importantly, this video is going to contain massive spoilers for Avengers Endgame. If you haven't seen that film yet, you're probably like the last person, so come back when you've seen it. I don't want to be the person who ruins it for you. After all, there are at least 9,000 other websites and YouTubers that are trying to do that for me, so good luck dodging those. This video is an opinion piece. Please try to recognize that this whole video and all of its contents are just my opinion. It's not a reflection on you as a person if you disagree. I have grown to become a big Thor fan, and this video is going to discuss the elements about him that I like and the elements about him that I dislike. So if you don't like my opinion, cool. Just don't be a dick about it in the comments. Thor is kind of a complicated box office property. The general majority of moviegoers seem to forget that Thor was viewed from a critical and financial viewport pretty poorly just a couple years ago. Thor and Thor the Dark World were two of the lowest grossing Marvel films when adjusted for inflation. In fact, Thor the Dark World is actually the lowest grossing MCU film, period. For being a character with two films, this character's actions in team-up films always came across as playing a second fiddle, with Thor being reduced to a guy that just kind of smashes crap, almost like the backup Hulk. And when the entire cinematic universe like the MCU is doing really well and one character is not, you have a problem. You need to course correct and change elements of that character around, or shelve him until you can figure it out. And I think this is where we found ourselves with Thor after Age of Ultron. The Thor standalone films, in my opinion, suffered from a number of flaws. The stories were kinda generic and boring, and the pacing was either too slow in Thor or too fast in Thor the Dark World. Loki was an incredible villain, but for every positive aspect Loki brought to the table, Malekith kinda lacked in the follow-up. Thor 1 had some great action in the beginning, but then Thor loses his powers, and he pretty much spends the majority of the movie dicking around on Earth with a cast of characters that we know are never really going to end up in any significant stance in the MCU. And of course, the entire plot to Thor the Dark World was just kind of bland and uninspired.
All of this combined with a romance arc in these films that kind of felt tired, boring, and forced, and the whole thing just wasn't a great package. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the public was not on board with Thor films. Sure, comic book lovers loved Thor films, but, the general majority of everybody else did not. He didn't really work in the role of the straight man while all of this comedy was constantly surrounding him. It didn't work. Now, one of the many positive elements of Marvel Studios is that sometimes Marvel Studios does a really good job of showing us something in these characters that we didn't know that we wanted. In fact, Chris Hemsworth even recently said in an interview that he was burned out of playing Thor before Thor Ragnarok. And that film's success reinvigorated his desire to even play the role. And he even pitched that Thor should be more like Ragnarok in Avengers Infinity War and in Endgame. Now, the character of Thor rebounded pretty massively thanks to the breakout success of Thor Ragnarok. Director Taika Waititi did a number of brilliant things with the franchise and the character by essentially shifting the status quo for Thor completely. First, he removed Thor from Earth and removed Thor's beloved hammer Mjolnir. Thor's entire identity as a hero and an Avenger was that he was the protector of Midgard, Thor the Worthy. But as Odin so effortlessly put it, the real thing that this movie showed us was that Thor wasn't the god of hammers. He's the god of thunder. Next, they moved the setting. The majority of the film was spent between Sakaar and Asgard. Sakaar allowed Thor to explore just how powerful he could be without Mjolnir by pairing him up against the Incredible Hulk in one of the best fights in the MCU. I mean, let's face it, pretty much any time Hulk and Thor fight somebody, it's one of the best fights in the MCU, so they didn't really have to try. This one was going to be a banger no matter what. Fans may not have got a true answer to who the strongest Avenger was, but the fight and the character's subsequent banter was fun. Sakaar required Thor to use his brains and wits to escape, rather than just one-dimensionally bashing his way through the plot as he had done in Thor and in Dark World, and in the Avengers, and in all of Age of Ultron. Thor's character growth throughout Ragnarok was also more significant and complex. The film's comedic effect worked well, but it was also successful at being dark when it needed to be. This was a big improvement over the first two films, who, in my opinion, simply lacked a consistent tone. Hela was a fantastic villain with true motivation and a real challenge to Thor in terms of strength. Hela forced Thor to reevaluate his place within Asgard by usurping his right to rule, and in so doing forced him to take his place as their new king. This, combined with the fact that Thor could no longer rely on Mjolnir, allowed him to embrace the side of him that he never truly mastered, his Thunder God abilities. The audience learned that Thor's hammer was just a vessel for Thor to channel his already incredible strength through. In my eyes, and in the eyes of many fans, Thor grew significantly as a hero, and he finally stepped into a role that was less one-dimensional and self-centered and more kingly. One last element about Ragnarok that I really wanted to discuss is that it removed the really tired romance element that had become baked into this character. And don't get me wrong, I like Natalie Portman, and her character as Jane Foster was alright, but we wanted to see Thor focus on heroism instead of kind of being blinded by his pursuit of love. I think more often than not, these romance arcs are included in these films because directors feel like they have to put them in there, and I think that audiences are pretty much over that. This character's growth continued right into Avengers Infinity War. Thor loses half of his people to Thanos, who kills his brother, kills Heimdall, and leaves him for dead. Instead of backing down, Thor bands up and goes on this epic quest to avenge the people he's lost by forging Stormbreaker. Along the way, Thor also happens to meet the Guardians of the Galaxy, who he seems to pair up really well with. After forging Stormbreaker, his power is amplified, and his actions in the film made him a complete fan favorite and standout of the film. Many videos on YouTube, including our own, marked him as the de facto strongest Avenger going forward and a clear badass. So here we are with this new version of Thor, carrying Stormbreaker, clearly the strongest Avenger, on a road to become the king and redeem everybody he's lost, and you wonder, how could they possibly improve this character going into Endgame? Well, the answer is pretty simple. They couldn't. In my opinion, every positive piece of character growth that Thor went to was tossed out the window during Endgame. During the beginning mission of Endgame, we see Thor eager to avenge the Fallen by bringing the God Pain to Thanos. So the Avengers suit up and they go to Thanos' vacation house where they bum rush him and kick his ass. After learning that Thanos used the stones again to destroy the stones, Thor takes Thanos up on a suggestion from Infinity War and aims for the head, decapitating him. This was a pretty sobering moment for Thor, as he was the one who felt that he failed the most of any Avenger. He was the first person to fight Thanos and he lost, and he made the mistake of not going for the head the second time he fought him. The entire decimation was, in his opinion, on his shoulders, and damn it, Hemsworth showed us all of this and more in his performance at the beginning of Endgame. However, at this point in time, we flash forward 5 years, and after some other events, we end up going to New Asgard and meeting up with future Thor. Hulk and Rocket go and try to talk Thor into joining their new plan, and he is a bumbling and pathetic fat drunk. Gone is the king of Asgard. Gone is the triumphant thunder god. Gone is quite possibly the most dedicated hero on the Avengers roster, who was willing to sacrifice his own life for a shot at forging a weapon that might be able to take on Thanos. Instead, we are gifted with this hot mess of a once proud hero who's playing Fortnite and drinking more than me, which is honestly pretty impressive. Thor spends virtually the rest of Endgame being the comedic relief for any scene that he's in, except it's not funny, it's pathetic. It's obvious that he's supposed to be pathetic at first. You're supposed to think, wow, he's really emotionally broken, but it just never gets any better. Thor is eventually tasked with going back in time with Rocket to retrieve the ether, and he just kind of acts like a dipshit the whole time. Thor went from being the kind of Avenger who would sacrifice all of Asgard to protect the Nine Realms from his sister to not being able to go through with the mission because he sees his mommy. Rocket gives him a really rational pep talk, and he comes up to him and he's like, listen man, you need to man up, let's get this done, you can get back everything you've lost if we just do this thing. And instead, Thor goes and acts like an idiot. When he does finally meet up with his past version of his mother, the pep talk she gives him is just not good. It doesn't land. It lacked the sincerity that the character needed, and I think the whole segment was almost a callback to things about the character in previous films that just didn't work. The only thing I can really compare it to is a CW show like Arrow or The Flash, where the heroes keep making the same mistakes and never learning from them ever. This story element ends with Thor calling out for Mjolnir and reaffirming with himself that he's still worthy, but it doesn't really do anything as a scene to address his behavior. At one point, I started to fantasize that we were going to get a truly fan-servicing type of moment where Thor would reach out for Mjolnir, and when it hit his hand, he would transform into the Thor we all knew. Shredded, suited up in armor, and ready to go. Now, keep in mind, I agree that this would have been a ridiculous and hokey thing to happen. I was actually just so desperate to get the Thor I liked back that I was willing to accept that shitty of a plot element just to get it. When Thor gets back to Earth, they end up trying to determine who's going to use Iron Man's Infinity Gauntlet, and Thor continues to act very childishly, and you would think that he would have been broken of that cycle by the multiple pep talks that he just endured. Throughout the rest of the film, he does eventually go on to take on Thanos. His fight scenes are pretty good, but Cap really steals the show in terms of the final battle, somehow managing to out-Thor Thor. Now, Thor's future in terms of a Thor 4 is kind of in jeopardy right now. They haven't really announced that film, and I think the reason for that is because Marvel was heavily criticized about, announcing Spider-Man Far From Home and Black Panther 2 and the Doctor Strange sequel before Infinity War came out. Many fans viewed the events of Infinity War as bait for future films, considering we knew that these characters were coming back due to the sequels that they had in development already. At the end of Endgame, Thor joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, which he dubs the Asgardians of the Galaxy, and I think that the MCU executives chose to put him there because, as Infinity War proved, his character fits well within them. After all, Thor is humorous, and he's not entirely unfamiliar with the cosmos, as we learned during the dialogue in Infinity War. Thor works really well in a humorous environment, but I worry that his character will be competing with the other characters in the film like Star-Lord, Rocket, and Drax, and I'm hoping that maybe during the events of the upcoming films he starts to regain just a little bit more of his seriousness. I think we can all agree that Thor was pretty funny in Thor Ragnarok and in Infinity War, but it did seem to strike a better balance of seriousness and humor. The MCU is going to continue full steam ahead. Avengers Endgame was a runaway success, and Marvel would be crazy not to include Thor in the mix going forward. What role he plays will be interesting to see, but I would hate to see him continue into this backslide. After all, we already have seen this exact same thing happen to the Incredible Hulk. But that's also a video for another day. Thank you guys for watching this video, and today's question is pretty simple. Did you like Thor in Avengers Endgame? Let us know down in the comments. It's a small question, but your answers are sure to be unique, and we want to read them. If you enjoyed this video and our discussions on the god of KFC, Thunder, then feel free to like and subscribe. Also check out our Discord channel, that link is in the description. We have tons of comic book movie fans in there ready to and willing to discuss anything with you. Thanks for watching this video. This has been Nick from Key Issues, and you know the motto, comics over everything. Hulk is a character that's seen a tremendous resurgence in popularity over the past few years.
We don't want Hulk. Oh, yeah. I don't think we'll be getting very far with this one.
Chris Hemsworth's Thor Odinson has been one of the most prominent and important characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since he first appeared back in 2011 in his debut solo movie. And that was never more true a fact than in this year's Avengers Endgame. He played a huge role in the movie, but he changed a lot since Avengers Infinity War, and he felt quite problematic in a number of ways as a result. In this video, we'll be discussing all the problems with Thor in Avengers Endgame. There are, of course, spoilers ahead. In order to emphasize how much Thor had changed and the problems that resulted from it in Avengers Endgame, we need to look at his MCU journey so far, and how he'd been depicted before that. For reasons we'll get to later, it's first worth pointing out that prior to Endgame, Thor has always been a confident, fearless character.
I am mighty.
Who was in pretty spectacular physical shape. Anyway, his first appearance in 2011's Thor saw him presented as an almost Shakespearean character, and it was something of a coming-of-age story for him. Even though he was well over 1,000 years old at the time, he still had not been given much authority or responsibility, unless it was on the battlefield. And when the time came for him to be crowned King of Asgard, when his responsibilities would have increased 100-fold, he proved himself to be somewhat naive and selfish.
Good boy! You are an old man and a fool!
As a result, Odin stripped him of his powers and banished him to Earth as a mortal, where he came of age, proved his worthiness to wield Mjolnir once more, and was offered the throne again. He declined the offer, however, opting to continue to become a better man before taking the throne of Asgard, protecting the 9 realms from threats. We next saw him in 2012's The Avengers, when he followed Loki to Earth in an attempt to prevent his adoptive brother from executing his plan to conquer it using both the scepter and the Tesseract.
He's adopted.
While it wasn't as easy as expected, Thor did play a big part in thwarting Loki's plan. Thor became part of a new team, learned to respect the people of Earth, developed in a positive way as a character again, and succeeded in taking Loki back to Asgard, where he was imprisoned for his misdeeds, along with the Space Stone. Then came 2013's Thor: The Dark World, where it was revealed that Chris Hemsworth's character had been fighting evil across the cosmos, and had helped to bring peace to the 9 realms, making his father even more proud of him and further readying himself for the day he would finally take the throne. And when a new threat emerged in that movie, the long-dormant Malekith and his surviving Dark Elf allies, Thor managed to defeat him and prevent the villain from taking advantage of the cosmic event known as the Convergence in order to plunge the universe into darkness. Then came 2015's Avengers: Age of Ultron, in which it was revealed that Thor had returned to Earth to join the Avengers in an apparent full-time capacity. He helped the Avengers retrieve the Mind Stone from Hydra, which was then inadvertently used to bring the titular evil robot to life. Thor played a major part in defeating Ultron, having had a vision and having sought out the means to defeat him, and was integral in the creation of Paul Bettany's Vision character. But at the end of the movie, having learned that someone was making pawns of the Avengers and collecting the Infinity Stones, he headed into the cosmos to find out more about the situation.
The Mind Stone is the fourth of the Infinity Stones to show up in the last few years.
Then 2017's Thor Ragnarok, a movie that saw the biggest change in the titular character up to that point in the MCU. He continued doing good deeds, like taking Surtur's crown and uncovering Loki's betrayal and banishing of Odin. But he was presented very differently, and we don't just mean his new haircut.
Please, kind sir, do not cut my hair.
But ultimately, having spent time as a gladiator, he escaped Sakaar to save the people of Asgard from his half-sister Hela, albeit by triggering the titular Ragnarok and destroying his home realm in the process. While heading away from Asgard aboard the Statesman with the surviving Asgardian civilians, he was crowned king and headed to Earth to build a new home for his people, which took us directly into 2018's Avengers Infinity War, a movie that opened with Thanos having ransacked the Statesman, killing half of its passengers and beaten Thor to a pulp in order to obtain the Tesseract. The rest of the movie saw Thor on a quest to get Stormbreaker, a weapon of the Thanos-killing kind. While he succeeded in getting it, almost sacrificing his life to do so, he didn't prevent Thanos from executing the snap. Thor threw his new weapon at the Mad Titan when he was wielding all 6 Infinity Stones. But all he succeeded in doing was wounding his chest.
You should have gone for the head.
Before snapping his fingers and making an escape through a portal. Avengers Endgame's early scenes showed the aftermath of the snap, with Thor looking particularly dejected and somewhat distancing himself from the other surviving heroes. When the early plan to find Thanos on his retirement farm was enacted, and it was revealed that the prune-chinned villain had destroyed the Infinity Stones, it hit Thor the hardest. And then he lashed out, decapitating the Mad Titan with Stormbreaker and saying, "I went for the head." And that's when the movie jumped 5 years into the future. Once the other surviving heroes devised their plan to travel back in time to collect the Infinity Stones from throughout history, they attempted to recruit Thor to join them on their mission. And it's at that point he was revealed to be a shadow of his former self. Although he was the supposed king of the place now known as New Asgard in Norway, he had become an overweight drunk, who Valkyrie stated only emerged from his little house once a month to collect a supply of beer. He lived with Korg and Beak, playing video games, constantly drinking his beer and hiding away from any and all responsibility. When Bruce Banner and Rocket visited him to get him on board for the time travel mission, he wanted no part of it, and the mere mention of Thanos' name caused him to almost break down. He was clearly fearful of the Mad Titan, even though he had in fact killed him 5 years earlier. The big problem with Thor here is that his situation was played for laughs. His weight, the appearance of which had been achieved thanks to Chris Hemsworth wearing a fat suit, was the butt of jokes throughout the movie, with Rocket saying he looked like melted ice cream. Ultimately, he only agreed to join the mission when the wisecracking raccoon suggested he'd be rewarded with more beer.
Oh, yeah.
It was all pretty offensive to anyone who might suffer from weight issues, as well as those struggling with alcohol addiction or any kind of post-traumatic stress. Tony Stark would later refer to him as Big Lebowski. James Rhodes would later suggest that he had cheese whiz coursing through his veins. And things like Thor nodding off while slumped in a corner were included in the movie for cheap giggles. Heck, when he went back to Asgard in 2013, even his own mother suggested he should eat a salad to add insult to injury. While he was there, as well as taking the Reality Stone, Thor also took Mjolnir. And that raises another problem in the form of the question, how was he worthy? In the past, we've seen people who were seemingly far more worthy straight up rejected by Mjolnir, such as James Rhodes, a highly decorated United States Air Force officer, and Clint Barton, a family man who, without any superpowers of his own, fearlessly fights against superpowered forces of evil. So how on Earth, or Asgard, was a dejected, lazy, alcoholic Thor who'd spent 5 years hiding away from all responsibility able to summon and lift it? That was pretty weird.
You're all not worthy.
When the time came for the surviving heroes to undo the snap, a discussion was had to determine which of them would execute it. The decision was made for it to be Bruce Banner in his Professor Hulk form, but Thor had also put himself forward, desperate to make amends for not killing Thanos in Infinity War, which allowed the decimation to happen in the first place. But he was deemed unsuitable by the group, given his physical and mental condition. When it comes to Marvel's comic books, Thor has always been depicted as lichen beer, and we've seen older, tubbier, more haggard-looking versions of him before. He is very Viking-esque after all, but he's never really been depicted as a complete and utter booze hound. That's more Tony Stark's bag and the source material. See the Demon in a Bottle story arc for proof of that. But we haven't seen that in the movies, because it's generally deemed to be unsuitable for a Disney audience. So why was it deemed okay when it came to Thor? Granted, there's a lot of comic book violence and the occasional naughty word in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
But alcoholism and mental health issues take things to another level. So it was really surprising to see it played off in such a lighthearted fashion. But the Schadenfreude wasn't the only problem with Thor in Avengers Endgame. His power level was also startlingly inconsistent with previous movies. Now granted, he was out of shape, which might affect his speed and mobility, but he's the god of thunder, and he was wielding both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir at one point in the movie, which really meant he should have been more powerful than we'd ever seen him before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Stormbreaker was enough to nearly kill Thanos when he was wielding all 6 Infinity Stones in Avengers Infinity War. But Thanos, without any stones, was able to almost kill Thor when he was wielding both his new weapon and Mjolnir. And it was only the intervention of Captain America, who took Mjolnir for himself, that saved the God of Thunder from certain doom. And where was the Thor who was crackling with power, slicing through Hela's undead hordes like a hot knife through butter in the Bifrost in Thor Ragnarok? We saw his eyes light up a couple of times in Endgame, but he didn't once use his lightning powers to their full potential, which seems strange in a fight that was quite literally for the fate of the universe. When Endgame came to its climax, Thor was on board the Benatar with the Guardians of the Galaxy, ready to venture into the cosmos as part of a new team.
I bid you farewell and good luck, morons.
With that in mind, we can probably expect him to reappear on the big screen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is touted for a 2021 release. Hopefully, we'll see the God of Thunder in better condition by then, both physically and mentally, because the controversy that surrounded the character in Endgame was both unwanted and unnecessary. And he'll need to be at his best if him and his new teammates go up against a powerful new cosmic threat. If you haven't already seen Avengers Endgame and want to check out Thor's current status in the MCU, get to your nearest movie theater as soon as possible, because all things considered, it's one heck of a movie. What did you think of Thor in Avengers Endgame? Did you agree that he was a problematic character in the movie? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Screen Rant, so you never miss our great content in the future. Goodbye.
Okay, now that Avengers Endgame has arrived, breaking nearly every box office record in the process, there's one big question on everyone's minds. What does the future have in store for the Marvel Cinematic Universe? More specifically, what does it hold in store for certain characters? Black Widow in particular is a big question mark. A solo movie starring Scarlett Johansson has been announced, but what exactly is it going to be about? Without spoiling anything, let's just say her character goes on an interesting journey in Endgame. So, what does it mean for her future? Turns out, there are plenty of great options for a Black Widow solo movie. And even though it probably goes without saying, we're going to say it anyway. This video contains major spoilers for Endgame. If you haven't seen the film and don't want to get it spoiled, turn back now. If you have seen the film, you're good to go. So, let's get to it. Still with us? Okay, great. Now that all those lame kids who haven't seen Endgame are out of the room, let's get to it. And hey, if you haven't seen Endgame yet, we're just kidding about the lame thing, but seriously, you'll probably want to get on that. Few fans doubted Endgame would be anything less than an epic and emotional event, full of twists and turns and all manner of excitement. We all knew epic battles and well-earned payoffs were a given. But with all of that extraordinary crowd-pleasing, you've also got to deal with the inevitable heartbreak. I know. Look, I like it about as much as you do. I don't want to have to say goodbye to these characters, but that's the price we pay with these epic finales. And look, even though there's no chance whatsoever that the Marvel Cinematic Universe will ever come to an end, it's nice that Endgame gives this first batch of movies a sense of closure. It's a fitting end, quote-unquote, to the 22-film saga. And most important, it's a fulfilling end. How often does that happen? With a good chunk of our heroes wiped out by Thanos' Infinity Gauntleted finger snap, Endgame gives much appreciated focus to our OG Avenging Squad. It's a smart move that allows for smaller moments with the characters we've come to know and love over the past decade. Sadly, no fulfilling end is without its fair share of emotion. There were a number of casualties across Infinity War and Endgame. Vision, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers. Well, technically Rogers wasn't really a casualty per se, but you know what we mean. He's old. He's not going back into battle anytime soon. Let him have his nap. He's earned it after all he's been through. And of course, we had to say farewell to Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. A moment of silence in her memory. Is there any way that we can get the sad Hulk music from the TV show in here? Look, I know it doesn't make sense, but it feels right. What's that? We don't have the licensing rights? Oh, okay then. Moving on, Black Widow spent a lot of Infinity War on the sidelines, hanging out with good old Captain Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson while they perfected their smoldering, strong, and silent vibes. At the very least, she got to take out one of the children of Thanos and do some general booty kicking. But in Endgame, she gets her big moment in the spotlight. It's just a shame it also had to result in her biting the dust too. Just to recap real quick, during their attempt to obtain the Soul Stone from the past, Black Widow and Hawkeye realize one of them is going to have to sacrifice themselves. Hawkeye insists on taking the hit. He's got nothing left to live for, he reasons, and he's become nothing more than a monster. Sure, he's a super cool monster with an awesome sword and a new look, but he's still a monster. Anyway, Black Widow refuses to let her best bud sacrifice himself. She reasons he has too much to live for. Plus, she wants to give him a chance for redemption, the same way he did for her way back when. It's a beautiful moment that not only puts emphasis on their relationship, but shows just how far she's come as a character. Starting out, Black Widow was more interested in survival. She'd rather make it on her own terms than function as a team member. But now, after so many years on her own, she finally found her family, something she was willing to die for. But now that Black Widow is out of commission, or is she, we've got lots of questions. We're talking about that upcoming Phase 4 solo movie. What is it going to be about? What kind of story will they be focusing on? Will it be a prequel? A sequel? Let's take a deep dive into Black Widow's comic book roots and see if we can figure out where to go from here. The character of Black Widow first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 52 all the way back in 1964. The story focused on her attempts to assassinate both Tony Stark and a reformed Professor Anton Vanko, also known as Crimson Dynamo. Tony ends up developing something of a crush on Natasha. Hey, that ended up in Iron Man 2. They end up going out on a date, which is rudely interrupted by Black Widow's partner Boris's attempts to steal the Crimson Dynamo armor. Of course, this means Iron Man has to rush in to save the day. Black Widow distracts Iron Man so Boris can zap him. In the midst of all this chaos, she manages to escape and ends up wandering on her own, alone and afraid. She's always been something of a loner, so this is a fitting start for the character. But just a few issues later, she ends up meeting Hawkeye and recruits him to her hip and happening super spy cause. They take on Iron Man together and, no big surprise, she ends up falling in love with Hawkeye. Because you can't team up to take on a guy in a fancy metal suit without falling in love with your partner in crime. In fact, it's her love for Hawkeye that ends up driving her decision to defect from Russia. Naturally, when the KGB caught wind of her defection, they were none too thrilled about it. They ended up gunning her down, which put her in the hospital. In case you didn't know, this is the event that inspires Hawkeye to seek out the Avengers and join up with them. Of course, Black Widow ends up recovering and finally manages to defect to the United States. She becomes an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, after functioning as a recurring member for years, officially becomes an Avenger. Okay, let's take a brief breather for a moment and look at what we've got here. Already, there is plenty of material for a Black Widow solo outing. Heck, we might even have a couple of films here. And you know how much Marvel Studios likes to make their monies, so you know they'll jump at the opportunity to make more than just one of these. First and foremost, we have the potential for a Black Widow movie that focuses exclusively on Natasha's upbringing and training. Her past has always been teased at, but we don't know all that much about what made her into the Black Widow we all know and love. Showcasing this story would give audiences the opportunity to learn more about the mysterious Red Room that we caught a snippet of in Age of Ultron. Additionally, we'd sneak a peek at the lonely journey that brought her to S.H.I.E.L.D. and eventually the Avengers. This seems like a likely route. After all, we've got Kate Shortland attached to the project as director. For those of you not in the know, Shortland's second feature, Lore, followed the story of a young girl in Germany during World War II. It focuses on her realization that her parents' generation was involved in one of the darkest chapters of Germany's history. Telling a story about a girl coming of age in such a disturbing environment seems like fitting prep for a Black Widow project. But beyond a Black Widow origin story, we've also got a potential Hawkeye origin story too. The opportunity to learn about Black Widow's past will inevitably result in the two crossing paths. maybe it's a bit too much to include both of their origins in one movie. Or then again, maybe not. After all, didn't Civil War introduce Black Panther and Spider-Man? It can be done. Alright, how about this? Marvel can just offer a little teaser of Hawkeye and Black Widow's relationship in this first film. For this initial outing, just focus on her origin exclusively and give her the opportunity to shine on her own. Then you can hit us with this awesome team-up movie that shows how she and Hawkeye became besties. Plus, we can see the story of how Hawkeye saved her life, a debt she finally repaid in Endgame. But rumor has it that Black Widow's first solo outing might take place in a more recent time frame. In fact, that hashtag show suggested it would focus on the period right before the character's first appearance in Iron Man 2. This makes more sense as Scarlett Johansson has reportedly signed on to star in the film. So, if we're not going the origin story route, what are some solid standalone stories we should be looking at? Well, who says we have to abandon the origin story entirely? Why not take a page from Richard K. Morgan's 2004 Black Widow run Homecoming and combine the best of both worlds? Morgan's story focuses on the character's attempts to escape the spy life. It combines a retelling of Natasha's origins with a modern tale that emphasizes what makes her so awesome. Or how about Nathan Edmondson and Phil Noto's 2014 story arc, The Finely Woven Thread? That's as good a place to start as any. The interesting thing about this one is it gives Black Widow a real chance to shine without relying on her avenging teammates. The events of The Finely Woven Thread focus on Black Widow's attempts to atone for her past and all the horror she unleashed as a KGB agent. This could easily take place in a post-Winter Soldier era. It would offer her the perfect opportunity to explore her roots and find herself while fitting in with the MCU's overarching narrative. Another fantastic Black Widow arc is Mark Waid and Chris Samnee's recent run from 2016. This could also fall right into the post-Winter Soldier world. It kicks off with S.H.I.E.L.D. making Black Widow their #1 target and her harrowing escape from a helicarrier. Not a bad action sequence to set the stage, right? Hey, wait a second. Didn't Mark Waid and Chris Samnee collaborate on a recent Daredevil run? So while we're dreaming of the perfect Black Widow solo outing, let's also go ahead and point out that she and Matt Murdock had a relationship in the comics. What a perfect excuse to introduce Daredevil to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And hey, while you're at it, Disney, why don't you just go ahead and uncancel Daredevil? Come on, you know you want to. And maybe, just maybe, Marvel Studios might totally retcon Black Widow's death in Endgame. I'm not saying they should, nor do I think it's a good idea. But any comic book fan knows that in this universe, the dead only stay dead for a limited amount of time. We're hoping Marvel Studios commits to this choice, though. As much as we might miss Black Widow, bringing her back from the dead will only end up robbing her death of any meaning. That being said, we have to point something out that may suggest Black Widow's return. Steve Rogers returned all the Infinity Stones to the specific points in time they were taken, right? So what happens when you trade back a Soul Stone? Does it return the lost soul to you? Just saying. But look, the Black Widow prequel route seems to be the best bet and offers plenty of great stories without retconning anything major. Regardless of what direction Marvel Studios ultimately decides to go in, it's clear that there are plenty of options on the table. Based on what we've learned here, it seems like Black Widow has a bright future in the MCU, despite the whole being dead thing. And while her bitter demise might still sting, fans can take solace knowing that there are plenty of adventures left for Natasha Romanoff. So, how about it? Are you excited for a Black Widow solo outing? Which story arc from the comics do you hope gets adapted for the big screen? And what for you is the key to making a great Black Widow movie? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our great content. Until next time, true believers.
While we enjoyed nearly 3 hours of epic moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe during Avengers Endgame, all anyone seems to be debating is one of the final moments. You know the one. Old man Steve Rogers shows up on the lakeside bench, reveals he spent the rest of his lifetime in the past, and decides to pass his shield on to Falcon. According to the film's own timeline rules, people were pretty quick to cry foul and point out the major issues with old man Captain America. But we're here to tell you, this wasn't a plot hole at all. The writers and directors didn't just go all willy-nilly and toss the scene in for story closure. Everything was meticulously thought out and planned, just not fully explained on screen. So, now we will become the true heroes of the story and break down how Steve Rogers' off-screen adventures were not a plot hole, and how he didn't break up Peggy Carter's family or erase them from a timeline. Without time travel in the real world, it's been a complicated ride seeing it displayed in pop culture. Movies like Primer, Back to the Future, and yes, even Hot Tub Time Machine all seem to make up their own rules and set those rules within their movie's universe. Unfortunately for us viewers at home, all the time travel rules only get more confusing the more we layer them on and watch new versions of it. During Avengers Endgame, we totally expected Tony Stark to pull out a family photo in 1970 and see his daughter slowly disappearing. Thankfully, the 3-hour runtime of Endgame allowed the filmmakers to squeeze in plenty of exposition, explaining their rules of time travel and what we would all expect when the Avengers traveled back in time and through multiple eras. The rules were laid out by Professor Hulk. Questions were asked, we were given answers, and everything all seemed to make sense. Right up until Steve Rogers goes to return all of the Infinity Stones and comes back as an old man. So what exactly happened there? Well, many people point out that the biggest plot hole would be Steve Rogers still existing in their current timeline. As Hulk and the Ancient One showcased, any major changes would create an alternate timeline, and essentially an alternate universe. So if Captain America went back in time, had his dance with Peggy Carter, and stayed there, he would be on an alternate timeline, and not be able to return to the moment we all witnessed. It makes sense. It's easy to process and conclude, but much like the single way of defeating Thanos and saving our heroes, there was one way Steve Rogers could have done exactly what he did. And understanding the logistics of it will help prove exactly why his lifelong adventure wasn't ever a plot hole. So let's jump to the point of the movie where Steve has to go back in time. His ultimate goal: return all of the Infinity Stones in their proper locations to help reset the timeline, prevent the stones from becoming unstable, and ultimately completing their plan. This process included a return trip to New York City, Asgard, Vormir, Morag, and the 1970 S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. What accumulated to about 30 seconds of screen time before we saw Steve Rogers transform into an old man must have been quite the adventure. The movie never made clear the exact points where he would go to. For example, in Vormir, would he see Black Widow and Hawkeye? Would he confront the Red Skull and return the stone? Does the stone come with a soul refund? And in New York City, how is the stone returned to Loki's scepter? Just insert and go? Would he see the Captain America versus Captain America fight and make it a triple threat challenge? His whole journey back could be a complete movie on its own. Either way, the return of the stones is no easy task, and Rogers probably shouldn't have gone alone. But we imagine all the alone time did him good, allowing him to think and really process his future. Or should we say process the future of his past. Steve definitely had time on his side, and plenty of it to contemplate his plans. The time travel ending didn't come out of nowhere either. The seeds were seemingly set in motion all the way back in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. In the movie, we get to see Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers reunite, but she's now 96 years old. A couple of quotes from Carter hint at Rogers going back in time to live the life he intended. One of them states,
"My only regret is that you didn't get to live yours."
And is shortly followed up with,
"Sometimes the best that we can do is to start over."
And starting over is exactly what Rogers planned to do. Years later, it's pretty incredible how powerful those quotes are and apply to Endgame. So when the Hulk explains traveling into the past, it does not have an impact on the present, because it is a future version of the past. Basically, the time goes in a loop, and any major changes would not alter the impact of what we've seen in the MCU, but rather an alternative timeline. So where exactly did Steve Rogers go when he lived his full life and wound up an old man? The best way to visualize it is like entering a virtual reality version of the past. All of the events occur and are in place like they were, but you are now living in this virtual past world. Yes, it's an alternate timeline. So how exactly did Rogers get back to the point in 2023 when he first went back in time? The answer all goes back to the time-traveling GPS devices Tony Stark crafted up for the Avengers. While the time machine itself was needed to initially go back into the past, the film showed us that thanks to the time travel GPS devices, a person could go to any location, at any point in the past using just the bracelets and some PIM particles. This is exactly what we saw when Rogers and Stark traveled to the 1970 S.H.I.E.L.D. base from the 2012 Battle of New York. They didn't have to return to 2023 first. It was all a part of the same travels. So using this same method, Steve Rogers was able to return to the point he left. He just waited many, many years to get there. So Steve Rogers lived his life in the alternate world, laying low for many years before he aged enough where people wouldn't recognize him as Captain America. Naturally, he would want to save the world and prevent deaths, but messing with the timeline too much could have resulted in disastrous results, as the Ancient One pointed out. So Rogers had his dance, got married to Peggy, and helped guide her through Alzheimer's. For him to go back to the point where he first went back in time, he actually had to live past that year, the year 2023. So the old man Steve Rogers could be from a week after the closing scenes in Endgame, or even years after, depending on his life course. Either way, he used that time-traveling GPS one more time to flash himself back by the lakeside, right next to the bench, and not through the time machine he left in. Not only did Steve grab extra Pym particles during his mission with Tony Stark back in 1970, but Hank Pym was brought back from the snap, so he could have gathered more as needed. He managed to save those particles for all those years, and traveled back just one more time to pass off his shield to Sam. And traveling back would have finally completed his journey, potentially closing off that alternate timeline, or making it part of a multiverse that was likely very similar to the one we've already seen, just with Steve and Peggy in hiding a little more than usual. And staying in hiding was probably a lot easier than people imagine. Hawkeye managed to keep his family secluded on a farm for many years, and Steve would be living in a time without cell phones, GPS, tracking devices, or facial recognition software. Toss in both of their natural spy skills and you have the perfect way to live off the map and off the radar. So while the movie did literally nothing to help explain Old Man Steve on screen, it did manage to establish plenty of subtle hints and rules that, when scrutinized, reveal a great deal of underlying logic. Putting the time travel explanation aside for a moment, another plot hole people have brought up about Steve Rogers' decision to be with Peggy Carter is the claim that he is a homewrecker, something the noble character of Captain America would never do. And while Peggy's character has claimed to have a husband and children, we can dive deeper to get some more details from these claims, and prove how Steve Rogers did not disrupt Peggy's plans in the slightest. Knowing the tricky balance of the future and what was at stake, Steve didn't just pick a random time to go back and meet up with Peggy Carter. It just turned out that the same year he retrieved the Space Stone and some extra Pym particles with Tony Stark was also an ideal year to meet with Peggy Carter. Thanks to films like Captain America the Winter Soldier and Civil War, we learned that Peggy married and had 2 children with a soldier Steve had once rescued. Technically, Steve didn't have to break the couple up. When he returns to 1970, they may have already been separated or divorced. Some have theorized that the mystery husband was actually Steve, but that wouldn't make sense with the timeline, because of the way Hulk explained the past. Everything in the past as we saw it in the MCU was already in the past, and Rogers' journey is in the future alternate past. So what exactly happened with the mystery husband? Well, let's look at the facts we're given. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers visits the Captain America exhibit and sees a video of Peggy. In the video she records, the year is 1953. With the Agent Carter TV show ending in the year 1947, we can only assume she met and married the man between 1948 and 1953. When Rogers visits Peggy in present day, she is suffering from Alzheimer's, and no mention of the husband is made. The pictures by her bedside for reminders are just her with her young children. There's no picture of the husband. And at her funeral in Captain America Civil War, Peggy's niece Sharon is the one who speaks. Not a widowed husband or any of her children. In all likelihood, her work in S.H.I.E.L.D. may have caused her to drift apart from her husband, and even possibly her children. Besides the missing pictures and lack of seeing the husband, another clue about a possible divorce comes at her funeral. A photo memorial placed near her casket reads Margaret Peggy Carter. Sure, she could have kept her maiden name, or better yet, she possibly went back to Carter after divorcing her husband. By the year 1970, a newly single Carter would have been the perfect time for Captain America to swoop in, get that dance, and live his life with the one he always thought got away. The only clue we see to the timeline is present when a vintage 1940s era vehicle drives outside the home. This car could simply be a classic, and isn't surefire proof of the exact year, just an indication of the past somehow. Not only would the divorce years earlier help Steve get the girl without any moral issues, but the extra time away would make a difference as well. Steve woke up in 2011, and didn't return back in time until he aged all the way until 2023. That's 12 years older from the time he left in 1945. Going back to a later year would help keep their ages a little closer and prevent any strange time gaps between the two. In other words, Steve would be 12 years older, and Peggy would be about 25 years older, with an age difference of about 13 years. Yeah, it's a little confusing, but in the end, Steve Rogers ages more slowly than the average human anyway. Going back to 1970 would also help with the culture shock a little bit as well. Steve has been living in the modern world for multiple decades. Heading back to the 1940s would have been a huge difference compared to 1970.
I really miss the days when the weirdest thing science ever created was me.
At least in 1970, the technology has begun to emerge. He could enjoy plenty of home television, and it would be a lot closer to the age of the internet. Steve's probably not clamoring to play Fortnite like Thor, but staying in hiding would definitely be easier if he had a little more entertainment to enjoy. So let's break down real quick one more time. Steve goes back in time, creating an alternate timeline where he marries a divorced Peggy Carter sometime around 1970. He lives his life in secret, lets events transpire as they're supposed to, and then once the point passes when he first goes back in time in 2023, he is able to use the time travel GPS to come back to the present day where he left. Just a lot more aged now. So both plot holes have now been fully filled. But with every new explanation or theory comes plenty of more questions. What did you think? Anything we missed? Do you agree with this theory? Did Peggy Carter get divorced? Did they live happily ever after? Should we get to see more footage of them together? Leave us a comment and don't forget to subscribe to Screen Rant for more great content. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. The Carol Initiative.
No, the Avengers Initiative.
Oh, right, that makes more sense.
So yeah, now fans are gonna finally know where that name came from.
Were fans wondering that?
No.
Well, okay then.
And so yeah, that's about it.
Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. I hope people don't get too mad.
Why would people get mad?
Because this character is a lady and the internet exists?
It's just a superhero movie. I don't see how people could get upset about this.
Hey guys, it's Ryan here. Hope you like that pitch meeting. There are over 100 pitch meetings on the channel, so check some of those out. You can also let me know in the comment section what other movies you'd like to see pitch meetings for. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share on Twitter, Facebook, all
Let it play, guys, as I can't figure this out. It's just going to take me a while to doodle.
Bye. So you have a script for me? Yes, sir, I do. So we're going to follow Tony Stark, who's a billionaire playboy weapons manufacturer. Oh, a playboy, huh? Yeah, and towards the beginning of the movie, this reporter, Christine Everhart, is really going to challenge him on the ethics of selling weapons. Oh, well, that's good, because sometimes when there's a playboy character in movies, there's a tendency to objectify women and get kind of... And then Tony's going to bang her. Oh, he is. And then Tony's assistant, Pepper, is going to call her trash and kick her out of the house. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's going to be hilarious. Well, okay, then. So anyway, Tony's going to go to Afghanistan to show off a new weapon called the Jericho to the U.S. military. Sounds like something they could do in the U.S. There's lots of weapons testing facilities. Yeah, well, they're going to do it in Afghanistan because I need it for the story. Fair enough. So later, he's going to be in a convoy that's going to get attacked by terrorists. Uh-oh. And one of his own missiles is going to blow up in his face. That's not good. And so then he's going to be held captive by the terrorists, and he's going to have this thing in his chest that's using a car battery to power a magnet to keep a piece of shrapnel from entering his heart. I have to say, it sounds like you pinned him in a situation that's going to be impossible to get out of. Actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Oh, really? Yeah, see, the terrorists want him to build them a Jericho missile, so they give him a bunch of weapons materials and mostly leave him alone. Well, that sounds super reckless. They also leave him with the doctor guy that saved his life, who's like the nicest dude. But there's a guard in the room or something, right? No, they are kind of keeping an eye on things through a security camera, though. Why not have a guard in the room keeping an eye on things? Because that works. Anyway, so since Tony Stark has a bunch of weapon building material and little to no supervision and a new best friend to help him out, he's going to build a kind of Iron Man suit powered by a mini arc reactor. A mini arc reactor? Yeah, it's like a super powerful energy source to power the magnet so he doesn't have to carry a car battery around. Wow. Yeah, and the doctor guy is going to be like, whoa, this thing could run your heart for like 50 lifetimes. Wait, is the thing running Tony's heart or powering the magnet? So why would that guy say that? I don't know. What a strange guy. Yeah. So anyway, Tony's going to kill a bunch of terrorists and there's going to be fire and explosions. How's Tony able to see out of the suit? Well, the mask has some pretty massive eye holes. And the fires and explosions don't roast his eyeballs? They do not. Oh, fireproof eyeballs are tight. Yeah, so then Tony's gonna go back to the US and the first thing he does is go to Burger King. Well, actually, I was thinking he could go to... No, I'm telling you that the first thing he does is go to Burger King. I already cashed a check from them. Oh, it's a product placement thing. Okay, what does he get from Burger King? A cheeseburger and probably diarrhea, if we're being honest. I'll add it into the script. probably just the cheeseburger part, though. So what does he do after that? Well, now he's changed and he wants to do good, so he announces that his company's not going to make weapons anymore.
Won't that jeopardize the entire company and cause hundreds of people to lose their jobs?
Probably. Kind of weird that his first good act is going to destroy hundreds of families.
Whoops.
Whoopsie. So anyway, then Tony's going to build himself a really good Iron Man suit.
Okay.
And he's going to have a hard time getting it to fly, but eventually he's going to get the hang of it.
And what does he do with it?
Well, he goes to kill people and then accidentally blows up a U.S. fighter jet.
This guy kinda sucks.
Kinda.
Wow. And who else is in the movie?
We're also going to have this guy, Obadiah Stane.
Oh, so he's the bad guy?
How could you tell?
Well, his name is Obadiah Stane, so I figured he's either a bad guy or a general in the American Civil War.
Well, it's the first one. That does make the most sense. So anyway, Obadiah works on building his own Iron Man type suit.
So you're saying the bad guy has similar powers as the hero, but uses them for evil?
Exactly.
Okay, before you say anything else, I love that, and I want to do it over and over again in any movies we make.
Won't that get kind of repetitive?
I don't know.
Well, okay then.
So what else happens?
Well, Obadiah can't figure out the mini arc reactor thing, so he paralyzes Tony and steals his.
Uh-oh, is he gonna kill him?
No, he's gonna explain his evil plan to him and then leave him for dead.
Why wouldn't he just kill him, though?
Because there has to be a final fight.
Fair enough.
So then there's gonna be a final fight.
Right.
And Obadiah's a really good fighter, so it's super tough for Tony.
Didn't we have a whole thing where it takes Tony a while to figure out how to use the suit properly?
Yeah, well, Obadiah's gonna get the hang of it immediately.
Wow.
So then they're gonna have a crazy public fight, and Obadiah's gonna throw cars around and stuff.
What's his plan here exactly?
Well, I guess it's to murder Tony in a very public way and hope that solves all his problems.
Doesn't seem like it would.
Yeah, it's not the best plan.
Huh.
So anyway, Tony's gonna fly so high up that Obadiah's suit freezes, and he's gonna fall all the way back down to Earth.
Wow, so he dies?
No, he's completely fine.
How? I don't know. Fair enough.
So then Tony's gonna get Pepper to overload this giant arc reactor thing so it blows up and kills Obadiah.
Wouldn't that also kill Tony?
It would and it should, but it won't.
Very lucky.
And so yeah, that's about it.
Wow.
So what do you think?
Well, it sounds like a pretty fun superhero movie.
Okay.
So yeah, I say let's give it a shot. I doubt it'll lead to anything huge, but we can give it a try. Hey guys, Ryan here. Hope you liked that pitch meeting. You can let me know in the comments section what other movies you'd like to see pitches for. Also, if you liked it, please do give it a like, maybe share it on Facebook and Twitter. There are also a lot of these videos on the channel that you can check out. And as always, check back soon for a new one. Bye-bye. So you have an Iron Man sequel script for me? Yes, sir, I do. So you know how everyone loved the
Okay,
first
guys,
Iron
that's
Man
my
movie?
son home.
Yeah,
Hopefully you
that's
have
why we're talking
I'm gonna
right
pause
now.
that so I don't have to
That's a very
shout.
good point.
Okay, that's my son home. Hopefully I'll get a bit more sketching done tonight. I'll play probably a VR game or something in a minute to make up for not gaming tonight, because I want to get this sketch done and ready for inking tomorrow. If you have enjoyed it, guys, don't forget to subscribe and tune in for next time. And click in the in the playlist for more Endgame pictures. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time tomorrow for Tuesday for inking. Thanks for watching. Click on Instagram for late night tweaks.